Come on, dude. That's easy. That's easy for you. And then I saw it was Tommy Sweeney, and I was like, I was with some people, and I looked around. And I was like, who else thought that was Knox? And everyone raised their hand. I was like, yeah, okay. So I'm not alone here.
You're now listening to the Wandering Buffalo podcast with your hosts, Andrew Chang and Justin Goddard.
All right, welcome into another episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast, a show here on the Built-in Buffalo Network. My name is Andrew Chang, and it's actually just going to be me today. Justin could not make it to tonight's recording, and the reason for that is because we're moving our recap episodes from Wednesday to Monday. So we decided to put this change into effect this week, and with it being kind of short notice, he didn't really have a lot of flexibility on his schedule for Sunday. So I'm flying solo today, so I hope you're okay with that. Justin has promised to make every recording after that, and I'm going to hold him to it. So don't worry, you won't have to listen to me forever. Justin will bring in some flavor too. Anyways, you can find us on most social media and podcasting platforms, and even on YouTube by searching up the Wandering Buffalo podcast. And today, we got to talk about the Bills' victory over the Carolina Panthers, a final score of 31-14. And much like last week when the Bills lost to the Buccaneers, I kind of found myself being in four areas after that disappointing loss. And I almost find myself in 3 to 4 areas after this victory against the Panthers. So, without further ado, I'll just kind of jump right into it. And the number one, I guess, area or phase of this victory that I've looked at is that the Bills start off slow. And before I kind of go really into that, I think what you can learn from a loss is way more valuable than what you can learn from a victory. And I think for me personally, why I think that's true is because when you win, right, you're not as self-critical of what was going on during the game. And I feel like Sean McDermott has a pretty good handle on how to fix that. And not to be ignorant of the fact, like, there were some wasted opportunities out there. We got to do stuff better. Well, I'm going to try my best impersonation here to be Sean McDermott and point out the areas like, hey, we could be better. And I'm not trying to be a party pooper. I'm always a half glass full kind of person. So don't take me for a half glass empty kind of guy. Anyways, like I said, the Bills start off slow. And I'm looking at the box scores right here presented by ESPN. In the first quarter, they didn't put any points on the board. Okay? The second quarter, you're like, okay, things started to turn up. 2 touchdowns and a field goal. They get a field goal right in the half. And then right into the third, they get the ball, move the chains once, and then they punt the football back to the Panthers. And eventually later in that quarter, they score another touchdown. But what I did notice was like, wow, the Bills had a real good chance right there to carry that momentum over from the second into the third, but they kind of didn't do that. And I understand that they ended up scoring a touchdown later in the third anyway, so I guess it kind of worked out, but the Bills had to like regain that momentum that they were building in the second half, or in the second quarter rather. So, like I said, I personally think the Bills have a problem, getting things off, starting off hot. And you look at that Tampa Bay game last week, and I still think there's no better game to really represent what the 2021 Buffalo Bills were than watching that Buccaneers game. First half, nothing. And then second half, they just put it together, and they're just building crazy momentum, great special teams, offense, defensive, efforts, complementary football, and we all know they fell short at the end of the day, and I'm not going to get into that game because it still infuriates me a week later. But, the Bills started off slow there too, and this game against an inferior opponent, and that's no shade going against the Panthers, but they're not what we think they are. This is not the year for them. You would imagine that they would have built off that momentum from the Bucks game and just kind of come out guns blazing and just, stay on top and keep it going. Well, it wasn't really that, at least from what I was looking at. It just seemed like there were a lot of opportunities left out on the field, and I'm not gonna lie, what was it? Yeah, when the Panthers scored their first touchdown in the second quarter, and then they were able to convert that 2-point conversion, I thought to myself, like, oh boy, here we go. How are the Bills going to respond? And we ultimately know that they ended up putting up, what was it, 19 more points than them in that quarter. So, or not 19, 9. So I'm okay with what happened, but that's not to take away from the fact that I don't really think the Bills should have been there in the first place. They really shouldn't have. I think that this team needs to go back to the drawing board and figure out, like, okay, well, we know how to turn on the second quarter, but what happened in the first? It's almost like they're in the first quarter. It feels like, all right, we have this initial game plan. Let's go out there. And then, when it doesn't work, they're just feeling out the other team for a little bit, and then they turn on the Jets. Now, some of you are going to say, hey, that means they're adjusting. And I would agree. They are adjusting. But could you do it a little faster? And I understand I'm not a professional NFL coach or quarterback or whatever, but it just seems like, they just kind of get off the blocks a little slow. And I'm sure that's a common problem across all other 31 NFL teams in the league, but that was just one area that I've noticed personally. Moving on to my, I guess, second area of thoughts is that the lines were not good in this game. Defensive line significantly better than the offensive line, in my opinion. And, you find out at like 10 or 11 o'clock, I think what Sean McDermott says, like, hey, guys, turns out John Feliciano has COVID too, and Deion Dawkins not going to be available for this game. So, what do the Bills do? They go like, okay. All right, Daryl, you go from right guard to right tackle. Cody Ford, you're going to fit in right guard. And I know all of us were like, oh, God, Cody Ford, right guard, hasn't done anything, hasn't proven himself yet. And I still feel like that. I don't think he really had that great of a game. Mitch Morris stays firmly at center. Ike Bacher at left guard. Whatever, And then they move Spencer Brown to left tackle. And it was not his best day. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'm pretty sure he let up he had 3 or 4 penalties, if I'm not mistaken. There was a taunt, there was a couple holds in there, and there was one move where I forgot what the defensive end's name was for the Panthers, but he came into Spencer Brown, did a spin move, and just quite literally just went around Spencer Brown and just went right into Josh Allen. And that was I think that was the penalty for roughing the passer, but it was clear and obvious to me that Spencer Brown just, he can fill in a pinch at left tackle, but right tackle is more of, the area where he should be. And going back to what I said at the start of this second phase or second area of thoughts that I've had, is that the Bills' offensive line, their preferred 5, and this sounds like, excuses, or not excuses, explanations really, explanations of the Bills' offensive line in 2020. They didn't have their preferred 5 out there for a while because Cody Ford got hurt and all this other jumbling and COVID and whatnot. And then this year, they finally had that preferred 5 out there from 2020, and then you find out, hey, we actually prefer to have Darrell Williams at right guard and Spencer Brown right tackle and Mitch Morris at center Feliciano at left guard, and I don't know, forgetting. Oh, Deion Dawkins at left guard or left tackle. And to me, it's just like, okay, that sounds fine to me. Why are we got to really rely on this rookie? All right, cool. I love his energy. He's a bulldozer, especially in the running game. And I think what you saw from today's game is like that the Bills can fill in offensive line gaps, and they need to, right? Because they didn't really have much of an opportunity. Like they just had to like go out there and fix this best as they could, patchwork it. But it was not a good outing for that offensive line. And I understand that Carolina has a pretty good defensive line and some pretty good linebackers, but geesh, I mean, for a while, like it just looked like Josh had no time back there. He was just like, snap, okay, look, dump the ball off. And there were some bright moments. I'm not here to like, completely just say like, hey, they didn't do anything wrong. Like that, I think Gabe Davis's, shout out Gabe Davis, by the way, he did a great job. Gabe Davis's first touchdown, they doubled Diggs, doubled Beasley, and Josh needed time to throw that 20-yard touchdown to Gabe Davis, and he was able to get that time. The Panthers were running a stunt on the right side, and Cody Ford, Darrell Williams, and Mitch Morse were able to hold up. So I was very happy about that. And at the end of the day, the Bills' offense was able to put 31 points on the board. It's just we have to look at this offensive line, at least for me, and just wonder like, okay, what can this line actually do if everyone is there? Because we know what it can do when everyone's not there, and it's super inconsistent. And I'm sorry to say this, but I've seen enough of Cody Ford, so I'll leave it there for him. But before we get to the third area, of course, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to wrap up this recap episode of the Bills' triumphant win over the Carolina Panthers, and we're going to start with, I guess, the third area of where I kind of went to after the Bills' W. And that's got to be the Bills' persistence, I guess, in trying to rush the football and leaving a lot of meat on the bones, I guess, is where I really want to take this area of direct this conversation rather. I thought that the Bills really, again, tried to play complementary football when we both know, and I guess by both I mean you, me, and the listeners, and everyone knows that the Bills are not a good rushing team. And I have the stats here. Devin Singletary leads the team. I thought it was, thankfully it's not Josh Allen again. And I'm not here to say like I'm not a fan of Josh Allen taking the ball in his own hands, because I am. I think incredible things happen when Josh does that. But he always just seems like he's the leading rusher on our team, which, that just, to me at least, says Josh is doing it all when, in fact, ideally in this offense, he doesn't need to do it all. He needs to worry about passing the ball. He doesn't need to worry rushing the ball. The rushing the ball is kind of like, okay, everything is falling apart. All right, now I take the ball. Right? But not this game. Devin Singletary carries the ball 22 times, 86 yards, an average of 3.9 yards per average, and 1 touchdown. After that, it's your boy Josh Allen, 3 carries for 24 yards and an 8-yard per average. And then Isaiah McKenzie and Breida both touched the ball 1 time on rushes. So it was Devin Singletary all day. Josh Allen kind of took it when he needed to, when the pocket was collapsing. And Zach Moss was a healthy scratch again. So what have I learned from the Bills rushing, or their persistence to rush the football, is that I think philosophically, deep down, they know that their strengths are passing the football, but I think I think what they want to do is run the football at least 4 to 5 yards per clip. And as a result, it's going to open things up in the passing game because, if you have a somewhat respectable running game, then you're going to draw linebackers in, and that's going to open up throwing lanes. Well, I guess it kind of worked here. The Bills averaged 4.4 yards per carry, and Josh Allen threw for 210 yards, 3 touchdowns, and wow, 3 touchdowns. In hindsight, it didn't even feel like that, and I guess that's where the whole leaving a lot of meat on the bones kind of comes in, or meat on the bone kind of comes in. But it just feels like for me that the Bills' rushing offense is not threatening enough for for opposing defenses. And I get that Devin Singletary rushed the ball for a touchdown in this game, but when was the last time that happened? I literally couldn't tell you when the last time the Bills, a Bills running back scored a touchdown, or Devin Singletary at least. Was it like week 2 in Miami? Was that when it happened last? I don't know. And then I got to talk about these wasted opportunities. And one specific one kind of stands out to most of us. And that's probably the Tommy Sweeney's drop pass. Hits him, Josh Allen rolls out to his right, throws it to Tommy Sweeney, hits him in the hands, and he drops it. When the Bills were trying to build up that momentum. Like I said, the Bills in that first segment, the Bills are, a team that seems, at least to my opinion, have slow starts. And they started building momentum. I liked it. And the fact that Sweeney dropped that was a backbreaker. And I almost feel kind of guilty about this because I knew it was a tight end that was catching the ball, and I didn't even see the numbers, but I just thought it was Knox. And I was like, Knox, man, come on, dude. That's easy. That's easy for you. And then I saw it was Tommy Sweeney, and I was like, I was with some people, and I looked around. And I was like, who else thought that was Knox? And everyone raised their hand. I was like, yeah, okay. So I'm not alone here. But Knox, I thought he had a pretty good game. But anyways, getting back to it, there were a lot of opportunities in this game to put more points on the board. And I get that we beat the Panthers by a score of 17, but the game just felt closer than that. It felt like, take away that Gabe Davis touchdown at the end, right? And it's like a 24-14 game, and I don't know if this makes any sense, but throughout that entire game, I just didn't really feel like the Panthers were truly out of it until Gabe Davis scored his second touchdown. So, and it didn't need to be like that, because the Bills could have easily put this game away way earlier, but it didn't happen. And, I was kind of nervous to the point where I was like nervous the entire game. I'm nervous going into every game. I'm always a ball of nerves, but I don't know if this speaks to anyone, but I thought for a little bit like, all right, the Bills need to put their foot on the pedal here, but they're not doing it fast enough. And I don't know if Carolina's like gonna come back here. And there was a point where Carolina was like outgaining us in total yards of offense, and I was like, how is this team with this terrible offensive line doing that to us? How? I don't get it. I really don't. And, fortunately, the defensive line, as I mentioned in the last segment, I thought they did a pretty good job of, working against probably one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. But, again, a lot of opportunities there for that defensive line, but they didn't capitalize. I felt like there were multiple areas where that D-line could have dropped Cam Newton earlier, but he was able to wiggle out. F.A. Obata, like earlier, and he ended up getting 2 sacks, so shout out F.A. But there was a point where F.A. had Cam Newton, I think, around, like, just wrapped up, but ended up pulling away his hand warmer or something like that. There was one where Taron Johnson had him, but he over-pursued a little bit, and his momentum carried him off Cam. And I guess this is what I'm talking about, is that there were more highlight plays and more areas for the Bills to stack, columns in the stat areas or whatever, but it just didn't happen. And we're going to need that kind of stuff if we want to make a deep playoff push. And then we'll go right into the last segment here, and that's the opposite of what happened last week. Last week, I ended on, a loss is a loss. Yes, can you take something away from a loss? Yes, you can do that. But this week, a win is a win. And that's all that matters. The Bills took care of their business. They have they're 8-6 now? Yeah, 8-6. Their next game is against the Patriots in Foxborough. And the Patriots just lost to the Colts on Saturday. This is a huge game, guys. If the Bills actually really did need to win this game, not for making the playoff purposes, but for contention for that AFC East division title. You want the Bills to win to get that title, then we got to go into Foxborough, take down McCorkle Jones and that offense and that pretty good defense here. But can they do it? And I 100% think they can do it. If they show up to, Foxborough playing this kind of game where there's a lot of opportunities left out on the field and them not taking advantage of it, I think it's going to make I honestly don't really know if I like our chances, because you look at that first Patriots game, we were in the red zone 4 times and the Patriots were in there once, and we all know what happened in that game. Didn't happen. It didn't happen. We couldn't capitalize on those opportunities, and I'm not saying that the Bills can't do that, but this game against the Panthers kind of gave me some pause. I'm like, okay, well, there were areas for us to get in there or move the chains, and it just didn't work out sometimes. Okay, that's against an inferior opponent. We're playing New England. They are completely different from what the Panthers are. But at the end of the day, a win is a win. The Bills, I think, are still the 7th seed. I haven't checked the playoff standings, but I'm pretty sure that's what I saw on the television. And they need to take care of their business. You beat the Patriots, great. Then you have a 5-1 division record against all of the other AFC East teams. You beat the Falcons, very doable, because Matt Ryan doesn't look like Matty Ice. He just looks like Matty Nothing. And then you look over at the New York Jets. These two games outside of the Patriots game should be W's. And if they're not W's, then we need to really take a step back and think about what the 2021 Buffalo Bills are, and if they really honestly deserve a chance to go to the dance. And I still think the Bills will make the playoffs, but that's just one area. That's just where I'm going to think. It's just like, okay, we just lost to... If you lose to the Jags and the Jets and or the Falcons in your season, you got to really think to yourself, like, okay, well, we beat this team. We made it to the playoffs, but, like, should we be there? And that feels so wrong for me to say, but I will ask myself those questions, like, wow, we really lost to those teams, but hey, we're here. We're here. And I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. And I'm not trying to be like super pessimistic. I am very happy that the Bills got that victory it's just I'm thinking like big picture. I wanted more from this Bills victory, and I know they're capable of it. We both know that they're capable of it. They just got to go out there and like do it. Carry that momentum from that second half against the Bucks. You kind of did that this game. You got the W. Now let's go into Foxborough, get the W there, and then take care of our business at home and hopefully get that AFC East title and make a deep playoff push. This team can do it. I know it. We all know it. We've seen what they can do. They just got to put it all together. And like I said, a win's a win. And with that, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks for listening. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and review our podcast. Again, you can find us on the Built-in Buffalo Network, and you can find us by searching up the Wandering Buffalo Podcast. We're always looking for amazing guests to join our show, so if you're interested, feel free to reach out to us. And you can always find me on social media by searching up Two Changs, my co-host, typically, who's not here, right? Justin Goddard, you can find him at jgods22. But like I said, that's going to do it for us. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their week, and we'll talk to you guys again before Christmas, but hopefully everyone's got nice family coming over. They got fun stuff going on, but we'll be here to bring Bills content regardless. So have a good one. Take care, and we'll talk to you on Thursday.